70% of couples infuse that into their
Of
nuclear
course.
family.
And it's the Ghana must go, you
yes,
carry into the
exactly. So you
relationship. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel.
Hello. So today we're back again.
It's been a long time and we're just happy to be back in this space.
That's it. And it's one of those days where we just felt we had something to talk about, which is quite prevalent in a lot of homes and is key to any lasting relationship, and it's the power of your tongue.
The Bible says that life and death is in the tongue. But there's a particular word they used. There's a particular... Anyway, something.
Yeah, so the Bible says the power of life and death
lies in your tongue.
So today we're talking about the power of the tongue in the marriage. And look, it's not easy, but I think it's important to just identify some of those things that we do as human beings that make us speak in a certain way, that change the mood and the power and the health of a marriage or relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, when we speak to our partners, there's something called, so I will say the textbook thing, and I will also talk about the practicalities of how this tongue can actually be quite negative in the home. So basically, we're all admonished to have clean communication, talk to your partners in a way that you would like to be addressed and talked to, talk with respect and talk in a way that actually reflects the love that you have for that person. So that's the textbook and that's the aspiration. I think that's the goal that we're all trying to get into. So how come some of us have this negative, I would say most people, it's just basically at different periods. How come we have this negative power in our tongue? What comes about it? I don't think any woman or any man just wakes up to become negative, except the person is just King Kong from hell. I think there are certain things that leads up to that point where it's like an athlete training to run.
Right.
You are not just training to sit down. The training you have been training will show itself on that day when you are with your fellow runners and you have to run. You understand?
Yes.
But there's a choice for you to train or not to train. Because the thing is, if we don't get ourselves disciplined or play out the scenarios in our head, we will find ourselves in areas where we are unable to catch ourselves before we fall. So it's like there are certain triggers that can lead up to the negativity coming out, especially in the tongue and especially with women. Even though there are men that are as catty as women, they talk anyhow, they say anything that they. But I'm just saying that let's talk about the scenarios or the issues that could lead up to, people losing control of their tongue and speaking in a way that is quite negative or has a negative impact on the relationship.
I think you've touched on something very important, and I think I would start with saying something that says in the Bible that out of the abundance of the heart,
the mouth
speaks. So this is where it starts from. When people are communicating, negative, positive communication, it is a reflection of how that person's heart is feeling. We might call it trauma, we might call it things that have happened in the past, we might call it unresolved conflict, we might call it anything. But when people are communicating, we need to communicate with love and respect. And if we take our marriage, for example, there have been instances where I haven't spoken with love. I will be irritated by something. I will be thinking about that thing and having resentment in my spirit. So I will now communicate that in a sarcastic comment or in a comment that actually triggers the other person, and then the communication just starts going downhill from there. And I think even with some unresolved trauma in the past, things that have happened in your childhood, things that have happened in previous relationships, and things that have happened in the past of your own relationship, when something so small comes up, you're discussing something and then you just get triggered, the abundance of the heart of something that is unresolved comes out, is probably trying to cause a little bit of hurt to the other person, because a lot of the time when we're saying things that are negative, that are negative and hurtful. You're trying to cause pain to the other person because maybe that person made you feel pain in the past over something that happened within the relationship. So, to answer your question, it comes from a position where something hasn't been resolved within the relationship. A skill hasn't been learned to be able to communicate in a way that is loving and respectful. And I think that's where we need to start from. How do we learn to communicate with love? How do we learn to communicate with respect? And this is going both ways.
Both ways. So for me, I think it's because we're human beings and we actually operate in flesh. It is almost impossible for you not to have that sarcasm coming through sometimes or that argument, but having a more deliberate mindset can actually help you go through these things. I mean, I would say even if you do have that nitpicking or you do have that argument or whatever, I think it's important to go back, not just to have it and think it's normal, because those things, as small as they might seem, they're not small. They have the power to erode the fabric of the relationship. So it's always good after you've had a cooling period. You should always go back and have that clean communication and then seek to understand why the person spoke to you in that manner, seek to understand why you responded in that manner, and then also seek to understand the triggers. So that way you're more mindful in not ignoring, you're more mindful in avoiding those things coming up. It's like maybe someone has a repetitive pattern in a relationship that is negative. Obviously, that's going to be like a trigger. For instance, a man comes home and says something that is not true to his wife, essentially lying to his wife, right? When she finds out, or in some cases, you don't even have to find that lie out for you to start feeling in your gut that this thing is not quite right, right? So whatever you're feeling, be it when you find out or when you're being told and you know that this thing is not true, it's already creating a negative chemical reaction in your mind, in your brain. You know that it's something, but you can't quite put your finger on it, right? That in itself is already creating an avenue for this negative power of the tongue to come out, and begin to manifest itself. So as you always used to say, keep it simple, stupid. It's just best to keep things simple, as much as we have, I mean, some of us have read Gary Chapman, and there are this lots of big words, deliberate mindset, being more deliberate as a person, being more loving, love languages. I think the first step really is just to keep things simple to the point where you are just obeying God's commandments, and it's playing out positively in you and your character as a human being, and it's playing out positively in your home and in your relationship and in your marriage, and with your spouse and with your children.
And I think the word you use that caught me is intentional. So there has to be an intentionality. When you go through life, and everyone goes through stuff, and we need to accept that no one is perfect and everyone goes through stuff. But when you make the commitment that, I'm going to communicate with my partner, I want to have a healthy, happy marriage, then you start being intentional. You see things for what they are. Be present in the moment, right? Like you said, we've had instances where maybe we're having a normal conversation, then maybe we have an argument, right? Things will just escalate. But she's always told me something that, don't allow this argument to develop into something more.
Because festering is
try and find a way
ground.
Try and find a way to arrest it. And arresting it doesn't mean that you start putting fuel in the fire, which is the power of the tongue. You start saying things, you get irritated, you start triggering the person, you start adding more to the person's uncomfortable state where they become very catty with their mouth. And I think as a man, you always want to be respected in your home. And when your wife is saying things that you don't like, it's easy for you to get irritated and to say something back. But I think as men, we have a bigger responsibility to try and arrest the situation. Apologies are always accepted. Being sincere about what you are saying, putting the word of God first as you are communicating what you want to communicate, and then trying to actually understand what is the meaning of what my wife is saying. Because another part of this whole communication thing is that women say things, but they will be saying something totally different. They are communicating something totally different. So it's not to take the literal meaning of what they're saying, but it's also to understand where is this coming from.
Exactly. Because I think partners need to be very vulnerable with one another. That vulnerability is the key to a lot of nonsense that happens in a marriage. You know, we need to be able to find a way, and this is your responsibility as a person, to find a way to communicate how you are feeling, to find a way to articulate and put your emotions in words, not just to behave barbaric. You know, some people use anger and shouting to just create a mess of their relationships, or, you know, find reasons for people to avoid you, or even avoid having a conversation with you, because it just comes out as one big fiery ball of fire. You know, it doesn't have to be fire, be the shaker. No. Find a way to articulate how you feel.
Exactly.
And then once you are able to master yourself, because a lot of us do this where we want our partners to change. I want you to change certain things about you. You want me to change certain things about myself. But we haven't become masters of ourselves. Because our first understudy is understanding who we are. You know, what makes us tick, both positively, and what are our triggers. You know, how do we like to be spoken to? How do we like to be treated? These are things that you need to communicate, because people have made it cheap. You know, the way to treat a woman is not just giving her money and buying her perfume or Range Rover. You feel give me that one, I don't mind. You know, but I'm saying that really and truly, that's a one size fits all. And I think that that's cheapening the process of the uniqueness of the individual. You know, we all have different needs and wants, and our different needs and wants has to be met at different times. You know, there's no one size fits all. And unfortunately, the society we live in today has, you know, created this thing where women are perceived to be quite materialistic. Once you can send her money, you have gotten her. That's why you can see that some marriages, some relationship where there's money, this woman is still not happy, because you have not gotten to the core, to the root. And one of the people who is responsible for that is not just you as the man to come and say, you know what, I think I know what you like. No. If you like egusi soup, you say you like egusi soup. If it's ogbono you like, you say you like ogbono. How does ogbono, how do you like the taste? What are the tastes, your taste buds? You know, there are different types. There's a type where you can actually taste something sweet. There's a type where you can taste the savory. There's the umami. What exactly makes ogbono your favorite? Why do you like it? How does it make you feel? What parts of your taste buds you feel is predominantly dominating the other? You know, we need to be masters of ourselves first before we are seeking for the change in another person, which totally replicates the Bible principle or the Bible verse that talks about removing the log from your eye first. You know, so let's master ourselves, learn to love ourselves, not in a, because some people, they do psychedelic self-love when they have gotten disappointed in relationships. They now realize that, you know what, I have to love myself. No, you can't actually practice self-love when you are in the subsistency of your relationship, because that way it's like doctoring yourself, you know, finding out what did they do you, finding out what did they pain you, what makes you feel sad, what can make your mental health begin to spiral out of control. And then that way you're in a better position to communicate what exactly you want from your partner. I don't like the way you talk to me in this way, because it makes me feel not, I don't like the way you talk, because it makes me feel, this is how it makes me feel. You can even tie it into some elements of your past to create a greater level of understanding for you as well as your partner.
Exactly. And, you know, you studied law, and in law, there's what we call case studies, right? A case study is specific to a certain person, a certain individual. We can't take blanket cases. We have to look at ourselves. And like you said, if I study my wife and my wife studies me, and she understands me and I understand her, and I understand myself, and more importantly, I can communicate what I'm feeling to you. Like you said, it's not just about saying, I don't like what you said. It's about saying, I don't like what you said because it made me feel this way.
Exactly.
And this stems from this past experience that I had. Because the level of understanding that we need to have as husband and wife has to do with, are you invested enough to try and know how to make your wife happy? Because we're here to serve each other. And I'm here to serve my wife. She's here to serve me. And we're supposed to invest time into understanding each other. And when we do that, we get to a position where it's easy for us to maneuver around some of these intricacies. Because remember, every day, any small thing from doing the clothes to washing
The
the
fight
dishes,
is always hanging
it's
around.
always
It's like a
looming.
spirit.
Remember, the devil is trying to find a way to get a foothold into
Kill,
your marriage.
steal, and destroy.
So I read somewhere yesterday that was saying that the devil wants the door to be open so that certain spirits can be able to come
To
into
allow
your
way,
home.
they
So
enter.
it can be the spirit of a little bad word.
Yes.
Then it starts leading into sin. It starts leading into something else. So we need to be wary of these things so that we can be able to express ourselves. I'll use myself as a case. I never used to express how I feel about certain things. I keep quiet and I start getting a lot of resentment inside my spirit. And then one day you say something out of the blue, and then it will just trigger. I'll say something catty. It leads into an escalation. And that's really where we don't want to be. We need to create an environment where when things are calm, you can sit down and express yourself without the other person shutting you down and belittling how you are feeling. I think these are the little challenges that couples are facing, where communication, I mean, you've heard in many marriage counseling sessions that communication. Indeed, communication, if done well, is effective, because when I start hearing my wife and understanding my wife and then acting upon what she has said to me and vice versa, then we start seeing a relationship where we are considering one another. Because if, for example, I had a bad childhood and I had maybe a dad that, he didn't speak to me in a certain way, and then it starts manifesting into my home, then my wife needs to have that understanding so that she knows that this is where this is coming from, so that she can start finding a way to help me to heal. Because essentially we are with each other to help each other to heal. I mean, I was reading somewhere where it says that your wife or your husband brings out the worst in you,
or the best
in you. But even when that worst comes, it's being brought to the surface so that you can find a way to deal with it. And your partner is the best person who is equipped to be able to deal with that thing head on with you so that you can start getting a level of healing.
Absolutely. Because the thing is, we need to understand that we are not each other's enemy.
Yeah.
We are supposed to be on the same team.
Exactly.
And the devil is the enemy.
Yes.
When you have that clearly,
understanding,
it's easier for you to know that, okay, you know what, we're not supposed to be fighting one another. We're supposed to be fighting for each other, So it's very easy to say. I think the cheapest thing to give is an advice.
Yes.
It's very easy to say.
Implementation
is always what is difficult. But implementation can be easier when you have a deeper level of understanding. I think that's what separates us from some gurus. Like, I used to watch this guy from India where he just basically, very simple in his attire, no frills, no outlandish venues. He sits down and he has like hundreds of people listening to I think it's Sanguru or something, and he just belts out this wisdom, So I think he has come to a position where he understands himself, because your wisdom will start and stem from understanding yourself and understanding the psychic behind human behavior, not just basically attacking what the person has done, but taking time out. This is where it catches a lot of us, because we tend to be quite lazy. I mean, in school we had no choice but to flow along with everyone. You do an exam and then you flow along to the next level of tertiary education and all of that. When it comes to life, and you have to now be your own teacher, you have to now be your own lecturer, you have to be the one to set examinations for yourself to test your knowledge of understanding. That's where the challenge comes from, So when we invest a little bit of time in understanding the behaviors surrounding human psychology or human psychic, you can use yourself as a guinea pig. You don't have to go to Mama Clara to go and start saying, this woman, they behave funny. Yes, she can be behaving funny, but you also try and look at ways that you are behaving funny, and try and understand why you behave funny, and try and understand when you behave funny, and try and understand how it started. Try to take it back. It doesn't have to be a movie where you now want to watch a movie. Hey, because what will happen? They will now take you back to the person's history.
Yes.
And give you an understanding. Okay, this is how. You need to do that for yourself, because it makes you a better person to be in a society with. We human beings thrive on social interactions. So if in social studies they would talk about how our positions in the society. What do we stand for? What do we want to be stand? What do we want the society to see us as? You know, social stratification and all of that. So it's important for us to have that understudy of ourselves as well as our partners, and not necessarily attack the behavior, but take time out to understand, you know, take time out. I mean, a lot of the times we're either watching something or pressing phone or doing something, you know. Take time out to go back, have a one-on-one discussion with one another. Try to let your partner tell you about his or her childhood, you know, and then you sort of trace your steps back, because it makes a beautiful story. I think each of our childhoods, you know, makes a beautiful story. No matter, I don't think anyone has the bits and elements of your childhood that makes it quite picturesque. You know, it takes you on a journey in that person's mind and in that person's boat, you know, and you sort of partake in that person's life at that time where he's telling you the story, you know. And then this helps to, you know, especially when you merge it with, okay, so why do you always behave like this, you know? And then the person can, it's you now need to dig deep to understand, was it your parent who was an influence on that behavior? Was it your environment? Was it your siblings? You know, because I went through a lot of bullying growing up, and my husband still wonders, like, when you talk about it, because those days, in fact, even till now, it's a taboo to talk about your past with regards to talking about a certain level of abuse you went through, because that's abuse. The people might not want to associate it with abuse, but it is abuse, a fair amount of abuse, you know, and it has the lasting impact to follow you to adulthood, which is not good, you know. So when I discuss certain aspects of my childhood with him, he's still like, oh really, so you went through that, and it gives him a deeper level of understanding as to why I am the way I am, as to why I would react to certain situations in the manner at which I do. And it can give him an opportunity to come into that situation positively, to try to help me heal.
100%. And you know what's more important for me and for my wife is that because life is full of cycles, whatever you've inherited as trauma or as poor communication, a lot of the time, 70% of couples infuse that into their
of course
family.
And it's the Ghana must go, you carry into the relationship.
So you carry that into your marriage. You now pass it on to your kids, and your kids start experiencing the same thing that you experienced as a child. So I think we are responsible in breaking that pattern. And you know, even though you had a bad childhood or things were done a certain way, I mean, we had a conversation the other day with my wife where we were talking about how to handle our son and things that were going on in school. I mean, the aggressive way to do it as Africans is kick, scream, but now we have to be more emotionally intelligent. We have to find a way to engage with our children. We have to find a way to let them speak so that they can be heard, because when we grew up in Africa, you can't really be heard as a child.
Oh, if you talk, you have no respect.
And we are talking about having a voice in the home. We want to create a home environment that is healthy for everyone, and it starts with the couple being able to communicate effectively with each other. The kids will watch you, they will learn, and they will now effect that in the way they communicate. It will bring confidence to them.
Because remember, kids will not do what you tell them to do. They will do what they see you doing.
So that's where it becomes very important. When you start seeing some of these things starting to happen to your kids, and you're like, oh, where did they get that from? Oh, it's from dad. Oh, it's from mom. So we need to really look at this as couples and say, how can we learn these skills to be able to communicate effectively? And how can we communicate with love and respect? And how can we be intentional in the way we communicate with each other?
Yeah. So to wrap it all up, it's just basically taking time out to study ourselves, study our triggers, study what makes us happy, what makes us feel empowered, what makes us feel sad, what makes us feel devalued, and finding ways to articulate that information to our partners, which is where the vulnerability comes in, where you put all manner of pride and ego. Pride and ego exists not just in men, but also in women. You know, finding a way to effectively communicate to them, so that way we start seeing each other as our own children and not in a derogatory way. You begin to have more of a compassionate, empathetic approach to your partner, to understand this is the reason why this person is behaving like this. So 100%. I will approach it from this, because if we keep acting on impulse,
Yeah. Destruction.
it's not going to help, you know.
Exactly.
And it's a two-way street, because if you're trying 30% and your partner is trying 30%, you're inching ever so closer. But if somebody is trying 30% and the other one is still in a really looking for 2%, then it's going to be quite difficult, because the willingness of heart is...
It's true. So it's a team effort. I think we're just saying, let's learn how to communicate with each other in a way that is effective. Let's make sure that, you know, we always communicate with love and respect, and the Word of God always helps to make sure that, you know, we are grounded in the way we approach different communication issues.
Yes. Yeah. And on that note, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I think let's keep the fire burning. You know, nobody is perfect, and we just need to start learning and becoming better